Hello and welcome to Ahead of the Curve. I am Jonathan Gellner, and thank you so much for joining us today. This is the first part of a series that I will be doing of solo podcasts about my learning and some of the different stuff that we are doing to build players at Union. They won't take place of the normal Thursday pods, but instead, the plan is to complement them with some bonus material to help start the week. For the last 2 years, I've gotten the opportunity to interview well over 100 of the greatest coaches in the world about what they do in their programs. When listening to podcasts or going to coaches clinics, there's always the question of, how does this work in my program? So, I wanted to start writing about my learning and what I've taken from them. This will be the audio version of the articles I'm writing, and I will include a link to my Medium site that will include some stuff that I can't express over audio. Let's get to Episode 1. Episode 1, starting with why. Creating offseason player development plans that increase player buy-in. First off, thank you for taking the time to listen to this. I'm trying something new besides the AOTC podcast, and I am by no means an expert, and I don't pretend to be. I just want to develop players, students, and people that go out and change the world. And if I'm asking the people that are around me to do that on a daily basis, wouldn't it make sense to do that for myself? So, that is my why. So why is my why important? I'll get to that in a minute. Just bear with me. So I love to read, and this hasn't always been the case. Most of the time during my high school and college careers, I rarely opened a book, much less read one. But a few years ago, I started my coaching career. Obviously, I was an expert. We're all experts because we played, right? I thought I had it all figured out, and that was until one of our players started asking me questions. And we've all been there, frozen, because we had no clue and never even thought about the question that little Johnny was asking. So, out of fear of embarrassment, I started digging into every coaching book that I could find. I had no idea how much there was to learn and think about in the world of coaching. This was my why for starting to go to clinics, my why for starting to read, and my why for starting the podcast. So again, why does this matter? Have you ever heard of Simon Sinek? If you haven't, he's got the third most popular TED Talk of all time, titled, you guessed it, Start with Why. Simon Sinek presents the idea that great leaders inspire others by putting the why, the purpose, before the how, the process, or the what, the product. This is the time of year that we are brushing up on our knowledge, listening to podcasts, and putting the finishing touches on our best idea of what the offseason should look like. So how does starting with why relate to baseball, and more specifically, offseason buy-in? Well, according to Sinek, there are two types of motivation used frequently: inspiration and manipulation. Inspiration would be the carrots, and manipulation would be the sticks. I'm sure you are all familiar with the carrot and the stick analogy. And these are both great short-term solutions. But there's a third option, the why. Most people don't want the what or the how until they know why it's important to them. And that's how we inspire action. And that's how we inspire the true lasting buy-in. If you are reading this article or listening to this podcast, you can undoubtedly come up with a great plan to make each of your players better. You're a learner, and your kids are lucky to have you. Let's say you come up with a player development plan based on years of research, backed by many high-level coaches and data. Let's say that it is curtailed to exactly what this player needs to maximize their potential and become a key piece to the lineup and a title run. And if you do, feel free to email me at jgellner7@gmail.com. But let's say you put in all of that work and you don't get buy-in. You start with the what instead of the why. You put the plan on a player, albeit a good one, without considering the player's psychological needs and wants. And we can't forget that they have thousands of swings under their belt. They've known their swing longer than they've known most of their coaches, and so making sure we include them in the process is a must if we want to create lasting change. So within our player meetings, let's start by asking the question, why? The real why. Most of our players will say they want to compete for a state championship, and that's great, but is that truly what drives them to get better on a daily basis? I'll venture to say no. If we are wanting to get to know our players as closely as possible, wouldn't it make the most sense to know why they're playing the game we all love? There is also a component of trust and safety, which Daniel Coyle establishes as his first skill in which great cultures are built. Normally, we think words matter. We think that group performances correlates with its members' verbal intelligence and their ability to construct and communicate complex ideas. But that assumption is wrong. Words are noise. Group performance depends on behavior that communicates one powerful, overarching idea. We are safe and we are connected. So now that we've established the why, we've talked to the player about this, let's get into the next step, the how. The next question that we need to ask is, how are we going to get there? This is essentially the process part of our conversation, the day-to-day. To state that the process is important would be, well, quite an understatement. I've included a quote of Nick Saban talking about it, and that's essentially what they build their program around. He credits all of his successes to adhering to the process on a daily basis. And if Saban is talking, I'm listening. We all may differ a little bit here and there, but I will share my thoughts on what the player development process looks like for us in the next couple of weeks. So after we establish the how, the final stage of creating lasting buy-in is what. The what is essentially what the end product will be. So we have assessed and understood our player's why. We've outlined a plan together on the how, or the process, and now we know the type of player that they want to become. We know what to do, and we know what the outcome will be. This is the final ring in Sinek's golden circle. The players just told us our why, we've come up with a plan, and now that's all that's left to do is to go to work. So here's your homework for the week. What is your why? How are you going to accomplish that on a daily basis? And what is the intended result? I'd love to hear your thoughts about what you think, and if you're enjoying the minisodes, you can find me on Twitter at jgelner7 or shoot me an email at jgelner7@gmail.com. Have a great week.